Your bread should not be this complicated. Hear me out. Your bread is supposed to be that one thing on your shelf that you can rely on. It's simple, it's easy, and it's reliable. See, but here's the catch. Oftentimes in breads you'll find in stores today, they'll have a plethora of things listed. Even if you look at this one over here, that is way too many ingredients. Stuff you do not want inside of your body. But wait, don't get me wrong. I do love a good loaf of Love's bread, but there are much simpler ways to get bread, and especially ones that won't damage your body. And the even better part, you can do it while enjoying yourself. Okay, let me break it down for you. Oftentimes when you hear do it yourself, it sounds scary and you're like, oh no, oh my gosh, I don't want to do all that work. But you can end up creating something super awesome, super simple, super good for you, all while you're learning to do something that helps you grow as a person. It helps you try new things, be adventurous, and even better, while you're doing it, you grow a sense of resilience and a sense of peace because you're learning something new and amazing. But I have to warn you, this might piss you off because when I first started baking, I kind of got annoyed. I'd spent a lot of times throwing burnt loaves away. I spent a lot of times with super short ones. I spent times with just weird, funny looking loaves. But the good thing is that it's a process. Every time you do it, your loaf gets better and better, it gets prettier and prettier, and it gets tastier and tastier. And that's the best part about it. Your loaf is an exact representation of your skill, and your skill always builds as you practice. But you may be wondering, Noah, how can I practice if I have no idea how to even make bread? Well, that I got you on. Okay, so for today, we're keeping it simple. I'm going to teach you how to make a 1/2 pound loaf of bread with milk, so it results in a much lighter, fluffier, and tighter crumb with extra shelf life, which is an added bonus. Okay, step number 1. Grab a glass bowl and a measuring cup. My best friend is the 1/4 measuring cup because it allows me to take very precise measurements, keeping it small, even though it takes longer, but it's essential when you're building up your initial skills and building those good habits. For step number 2, you're going to want to bring your milk to a very slight simmer. You can either use a microwave or you can use a pot on a stove. I personally like to use a microwave since I'm a little bit lazy, but you can use any of your choice. Okay, but wait, don't let your milk fully cool off. Make sure it's a little bit warm and you're going to want to pour in your sugar. I like to use honey because of how it tastes, but you can use any type of sugar you have lying around the house. You're going to want to pour it in, and then you're going to grab your yeast of choice. I tend to use sourdough because I enjoy making and having a starter. See, this is Larry, my sourdough starter. But for the sake of this video, we're going to be using instant dry yeast. The timing of step number 3 can be a little difficult. You do not want to pour in your yeast too soon. I repeat, do not pour it in too soon. See, the problem with yeast is it's very, very delicate. You pour it in when it's cold and the yeast go to sleep. They don't want to wake up and they don't want to do their job of helping the bread to rise. But when your yeast is too hot, anything over 140 degrees Fahrenheit, your yeast will die. So make sure to keep those temperatures down until, make sure your temperature lowers before adding the yeast. And I know I just slammed you with a pretty important step, but for step number 4, this is also pretty important. Leave your yeast to rest for about 10 minutes inside of the milk and sugar. It'll give it time to wake up and acclimate itself to the environment it's in. The great thing is, for step number 5, we can set the yeast aside and work on something else in the meantime. So, grab a big mixing bowl and pour in 3 cups of flour. Make sure that you poured it into the cup and leveled it, or you measured it out on a scale and poured it to prevent overpacking your cup with flour. Then, for step number 6, you're gonna wanna measure out your butter. For me, I like to mix half avocado oil and half butter because it results in a much more complex flavor and it makes it more fun to eat by itself even. Don't eat too much. After melting down your butter, make sure to add in salt too before mixing everything together inside of your large bowl. To recap, we have milk, yeast, sugar, then the flour, then we added in our butter, then we added in our salt, and we're gonna mix it all together. But only mix it until it's a very rough ball. Your ball should be just barely shacked into a dough ball. All the flour and milk should be mixed together, but it doesn't have to be a perfect dough yet. Now, let your dough rest for about 15 to 20 minutes so the flour can absorb all the milk and all the different ingredients, and it does the kneading process for you. If you were to knead without letting it sit, you'd spend roughly 20 minutes beating that dough ball. So save yourself a little bit of effort and let the dough sit and rest before you start kneading it, unless you want big arms. Now I know I've said there's a lot of important parts, but this is also a very important part. After kneading your dough for 8 minutes, make sure to let your dough rest. Your dough should rest for at the very minimum 30 minutes. However, do not let your dough rest for more than 2 hours because there is milk inside of the bread. If you let that milk sit for too long, you might end up with a sore stomach. Side note, when you knead your bread, do not beat your bread. This is not a beating session, this is a kneading session. Your folds should be very gentle. You should be very gently stretching it, pushing it in very slowly. You should not be killing your bread. Otherwise, that's gonna reflect itself in its flavor. It's gonna taste a little dead. It's gonna be very flat. So do not overplay with the dough. Make sure to be very gentle. Now comes the fun part. After you let your dough rest for at the least 30 minutes, you can place it in an oven of choice. For me personally, I love using the Oster bread maker because it makes my life so simple. But before getting this bread maker, I struggled with a toaster oven. So it is very possible to use a toaster oven. I do want to warn you, while brown bread may look nice, it may look appetizing, burnt bread is not good. See, as you bake your loaf of bread, the Millard's reaction takes place. So the way it works is when you heat your dough, it has a crust caging effect where the outside heats up more than the inside initially because of the heat transfer. The outside of the bread is closest to the heat, which causes it to crust up and dry up faster. But the problem is when your bread loses moisture too fast and heats up too much, it starts developing something called acrylamides inside the crust. This is usually dictated by a very dark layer of crust, and this is bad. It's actually considered a toxin for humans, so it is absolutely essential that you watch your crust and make sure that it doesn't burn. To prevent burning, after the initial oven heat of 425 degrees, make sure to turn it down after 10 or so minutes. After 10 minutes, turn it down to 325 degrees so it can slowly heat up the inside without further burning the outside and introducing more acrylamide to your body, which would be very harmful. Now I want to take the time to congratulate you. You got your bread in the oven, and from what I hope is it's going well, which I'm super proud of you for. But I do want to warn you, after your first bread attempt, unless you're a bread magician and a natural at it, you might take it out and look at it and say, wow, this looks like a steaming heap of garbage. But baking bread is an art. It's a skill you develop over time, and you can't be too hard on yourself. Just remember that you can always, always, always try again. Yes, bread is a big time investment, but that's honestly the beauty of bread. When I first made my first loaf, the first thing I thought was, wow, this takes way too much time. It's honestly a lot easier buying it from the store. But I thought about it again, and I read a couple sources and realized that the time investment you put into bread and to learning this skill is honestly priceless. It's an amazing form of therapy. It really calms you. And the added bonus is you're teaching yourself how to do something amazing. You're teaching yourself how to learn something new, which is honestly something a lot of people don't feel like doing. And the fact that you're over here, you're learning this skill, and you realize that you can keep trying and making it better, you're developing an amazing growth mindset and honestly an amazing skill set. And each time you do it, you get better and better, and you become more and more confident in your ability to make the bread, which in turn makes you actually make better pieces of bread because you know more, you're more confident in yourself, and you just believe that you can do it. And over time, it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of telling yourself, I can do this, I can do better, I can make it better than the last one. What did I do wrong last time? How can I fix that? And that mindset of I can do better every time really is what builds your skills up. It really builds you as a baker. And that's what I'm hoping you feel like. Even if you are disappointed by your loaf of bread, remember that it's a process. It's a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And that is what will help you become an amazing baker.